الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أوحي إلي أنه استمع نفر من الجن فقالوا إنا سمعنا قرآنا عجبا يهدي إلى الرشد فآمنا به ولن نشرك بربنا أحدا وأنه تعالى جد ربنا ما اتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا وأنه كان يقول سفيهنا على الله شططا وأنا ظننا أن لن تقول الإنس والجن على الله كذبا وأنه كان رجال من الإنس يعوذون برجال من الجن فزادوهم رهقا وأنهم ظنوا كما ظننتم أن لن يبعث الله أحدا وأنا لمسنا السماء فوجدناها ملئت حرسا شديدا وشهبا وأنا كنا نقعد منها مقاعد للسمع فمن يستمع الآن يجد له شهابا رصدا وأنا لا ندري أشر أريد بمن في الأرض أم أراد بهم ربهم رشدا وأنا منا الصالحون ومنا دون ذلك كنا طرائق قددا صدق الله العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد. Before I begin, I just want to let everybody know this left side here we are reserving for the sisters. So brothers, if we can come on this side, or the brothers can come in the middle as well. We like to, if any of the sisters want to come, they can please come to the left, far left. Brothers can come in the middle on the right side, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. قال الله تبارك وتعالى: ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. وقال تعالى: قل لا أقول لكم عندي خزائن الله ولا أعلم الغيب ولا أقول لكم إني ملك إن أتبع إلا ما يوحى إلي قل هل يستوي الأعمى والبصير أفلا تتفكرون. وقال تعالى: وأنا منا الصالحون ومنا دون ذلك كنا طرائق قددا. وعن ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال: قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: لا تستنجسوا بالروث ولا بالعظام فإنها زاد إخوانكم من الجن. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى أن يبال في الجحر. قالوا لقتادة: ما يكره من البول في الجحر؟ قال: كان يقال إنها مساكن الجن. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام: اجتنبوا الموبقات الشرك بالله والسحر أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. My respected brothers and elders and sisters and mothers, we begin with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we begin with the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins right from the beginning chapter of the Quran, after the opening chapter, Surah Al-Fatiha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts with Surah Al-Baqarah with the words Alif Lam Mim, with the knowledge of which only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And then Allah says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, that this is such a book in which there is no doubt. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, is a guidance for those that are God-fearing. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the God-fearing and the true believers, and He says, they are those who believe in the unseen. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Right from the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us our iman is that on the unseen. The things we cannot see above the sky, beneath the ground, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the understanding of it. And Allah alone knows about it. And we believe in it with not just our iman, but with conviction, with yaqeen, with certainty. So, when we talk about the world of the unseen, who would know about the unseen? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Alimul Ghaybi wa Shahada. Allah is alone the Alimul Ghayb, the knower of the unseen. No one else, neither a prophet, nor an angel, nor anyone in this earth, neither Jibreel or Mikael or anyone else on earth can have the knowledge of the unseen. It is alone in the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this throughout the Quran in more than 50 verses. More than 50 verses tell us that Allah is the knower of the unseen and no one else. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells His Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in Surah Al-An'am, قُلْ لَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ عِنْدِي خَزَائِنُ اللَّهِ, that tell the people, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that you do not have the treasures of the world. وَلَا أَعْلَمُ الْغَيْبِ, and you do not, meaning, tell the Prophet, O Prophet, say this, that I don't have the treasures of the world. وَلَا أَعْلَمُ الْغَيْبِ, neither do I have the knowledge of the unseen. وَلَا أَقُولُ, and neither am I an angel or like an angel. The reason I emphasize this point, brothers and sisters, because there is a large group of the people in the ummah today that have these beliefs that, na'udhu billah, that the Prophet ﷺ has the power to see the unseen. Al-iyadhu billah. This comes out, amounts to shirk and a major sin. Right here from this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet ﷺ to tell the people that neither do you have the treasures of the world, neither do you have the knowledge of the unseen. Then I ask you, brothers and sisters, a question. How did the Prophet ﷺ know about all of the things that are happening today then? How did the Prophet ﷺ know all of this is going to happen? MashaAllah, one more time. Quran gave him the knowledge. Good. We will say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted him a miracle. That's the difference. To cut to the chase, that's not knowledge of the unseen. That is knowledge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed on the Prophet ﷺ as a miracle. So the prophecies of the Prophet ﷺ are his miracle. That Allah had given him that knowledge to know that these things are going to happen. It wasn't that he knew of the unseen. He did not know of the unseen. And in another verse of the Quran, وَلَوْ أَعْلَمُ الْغَيْبَ لَاسْتَكْثَرْتُ مِنَ الْخَيْرِ وَمَا مَسَّنِيَ السُّوءُ. If I had known the unseen, the Prophet ﷺ would say, if I had the knowledge of the unseen, I would have gotten much good out of that. Meaning I could have taken advantage and no harm would have befallen me. But the Prophet ﷺ was harmed many times. He was harmed many times in the worldly sense. And that's because he did not have knowledge of the unseen. Yes, he was told many times through Jibreel alayhi salam, through a revelation about certain things. And if he was not told about those things, then he would not have known. So that's what we're trying to say today, is that the knowledge of the unseen world is only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is our number one belief, and we have to understand that. Now the second thing is, we believe that after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this entire creation, there are different realms and worlds Allah has created in this unseen world. Amongst those realms or different types of world is the world of light, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the angels, the angelic world. And the world of the angels is very different from all of the other worlds. The world of the jinn is separate. The jinn cannot see the angels, according to the scholars. They cannot. They're made of a different substance. They're made of something different, and the angels are different. The angels are different from the human beings and the jinn in the sense that they don't have free will. We know that already. They are created from a divine nur, a light. Now, the human beings and the jinn have certain things in common. Okay? they have certain things in common. Before I mention those, I wanted to just say these hadith before I forget them. A lot of times I start with the hadith and I forget these. And that is that the Prophet ﷺ, narrated by Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, mentioned that لا تستنجثوا بالروث ولا بالعظام. Excuse me. Do not cleanse yourself with excrement or bones. So back in the days, instead of having they didn't have the nice, lush, comfortable toilet paper that we have. They had other things that they would utilize. And from amongst those things was dung, was bones, and different things. And of course, other than water, you're asking, different material and things that they could cleanse themselves with. So the Prophet ﷺ made it a point to mention that do not use the excrement or bones. Don't use bones. Why? He said, فَإِنَّهَا زَادُ إِخْوَانُكُم مِّنَ الْجِنِّ. He said, this is the provision of your jinn, your brethren among the jinn. In other words, the jinn eat from that. That's their provision. That's their rizq that they have, right? I heard in a family, one of these, a while back, one of our mothers was having, some meat or whatever, and the bone is showing, and then now she's like, some people like to chew the bone as well. So the husband was saying, oh, Allah ki bandi, like, oh, servant of Allah, at least leave something for the jinn. Meaning like, that's their food, man. Why you already had your meat, leave something for them now, So that's something important, and actually some people have a habit of doing that. Well, they'll keep all the bones, they'll collect it, and they'll keep it outside, and they'll leave it outside. And so this is the truth right here, okay? This is what the jinn have. So leave that for them. The other hadith I mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ prohibited to urinate in holes, okay? Qatada radiallahu anh asked, he replied, what's the problem of urinating in holes? He said, it is some of the inhabitants of the jinn. So we're going to talk about that later on as well. Where do the jinn usually live? And amongst those places is the, certain holes and places where shade and, other areas. So be careful about that. Plus there's animals there as well. Then the last hadith I mentioned was اجتنبوا الموبقات الشرك بالله والسحر. That protect yourself and avoid the mubiqat. Mubiqat are those things that would destroy a person. What are the things that would destroy? I mean, there's a whole list of things in hadith, but the two that are mentioned here is ashirku billah, associating partners with Allah, and sihr, and magic. Okay, this would destroy a person and land a person directly in the hellfire. So, now that we have talked about that part, we're talking about the world of the unseen. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is alone the knower. And then we talked about nobody else knows, neither prophets, neither angels, no one else knows. Then you have the world of the angels, which is totally separate from the jinn. And now we talk a little bit about the world of the jinn, okay? And how are the jinn very similar to the human beings? First and foremost, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses in the Quran both the humankind and the jinn kind together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Rahman, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ يَا مَعْشَرَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says الثَّقَلَانِ, الثَّقَلَانِ are the two heavy things. The two heavy things is mentioned according to the Mufassirun, human beings and the jinn. And the reason they're called the two heavy is because both of them have to account. Just like we have to account on the Day of Judgment for our deeds, the jinn also have to account for their deeds. Okay? So in the ways that they are similar is what? That they have willpower as well. Meaning free will. They're able to do good and they're able to do bad. And that's like a big myth amongst people. People think that all jinn are evil, they're demonic, and they're just bad. But that's not true. There are good jinns and there are bad jinns. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions when the jinn were speaking to the Prophet ﷺ, and Surah Al-Jinn talks a lot about it, they said, وَأَنَّا مِنَّا الصَّالِحُونَ وَمِنَّا دُونَ ذَلِكَ. Amongst us there are righteous ones and some that are not quite there yet. Meaning there's a whole array of different jinn. There are Muslims, there are non-Muslims, there are different kind, there are righteous, there are irrighteous, it varies. Just like in mankind, in humankind. Then the other thing is that, again, they have the ability to choose good or evil. And then as far as the physical form, we know that they are very, very different from the human beings. Okay? First, we'll start with, what does the word jinn even mean? What does the word jinn mean? So the jinn comes from the root word jim, noon, noon, jannana or jinnah. Okay? Anytime you have these letters coming together, it has the meaning of being hidden, something being hidden from us. Okay? Hidden from the eyes. So you have the word jinn itself, that they are hidden from us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ هُوَ وَقَبِيلُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُمْ. They see you, they and their tribe, meaning they and the other jinns, they see you from where you do not see them. So they can see us clearly, and we cannot see them unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. Okay? That's how it is. Then another meaning here of jinnah is that, what else has jinn, noon, noon? The word jannah. Okay? Very interesting. Jannah, something no eye has ever seen. Then another thing that comes from jim, noon, noon. Can anybody guess? Anybody guess another word? Jim, noon, noon? Junoon. Allahu Akbar. Junoon. Craziness. Madness. Can you see someone's craziness in their madness? You can't see it, but you know it. Or you can see it in some people. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, Ashabu shu'batum min al-junun. He said that the youth or the young, the youth have a portion of craziness, madness inside them. You wonder why they're jumping around and they're doing this. It seems like sometimes they're very crazy. But this is just a part of the youth, because Allah has given them that energy and the ability to do so much. So this junoon is something you cannot see. Another word is janeen as well. Janeen, which is what? Basically the womb. You cannot see in the womb, of course. So this is very interesting as far as the word is concerned. Now, this is one of the most asked questions is, how did it look? When we talk about jinn stories, especially in like madaris and when we go to camp, we're always talking about jinn stories. This is the thing that the youth, the young people that love it, they'll gather around and they can sit there for hours listening. And some of us take advantage of that and sometimes make up stories, but then it's good that we can tell them other good things. Alhamdulillah. We try not to make up anything, but anyways, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said that the jinn can take the form of men. The jinn can take form of the men. They can take form of animals, scorpions, camels, cows, sheep, horses, donkeys, the form of birds, the form of cats and dogs, which by the way is the most common form, believe it or not. And then the color which agrees with them the most or with their strength is black. Okay? So when you see, and this is a reason why at one point at the time of the Prophet in the seerah, that there were some black dogs and they were basically wild, and the Prophet ordered for them to be killed. Because, and most of the time that there were some shayateen in those dogs. Okay? Not every black dog or black cat is going to be a jinn, but a lot of times they are as well. So not to be scared, like I said again, they are good jinn and there are bad and evil jinns as well. So these are the different forms. So what does that mean? What does a jinn look like? Like nothing. The jinn can take any form they want. Most forms they can take. Some scholars say that they are like energy and not matter. So you have energy, and they can take, different forms. They can, if they were matter, they wouldn't be able to travel through things, like through walls and stuff like that, right? So it is like an energy. Then we talk about their origin and their creation, as we know, that they're created from a smokeless flame of fire, a fire that is smokeless. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the angels were created from light, the jinn created from a smokeless flame of fire, and Adam was created from that which has been described to you. The next thing is their status. Where is their status is concerned? And by the way, I was thinking that we can make this into a series as well, because there's so much to talk about. I'm going to kind of go over the basic stuff, and then we can start again and go a little bit more in detail, because there's a lot to talk about. But inshallah, whatever we can get done for today. So the jinn, their status is far less honorable as compared to human beings. So even the pious amongst the jinn are less or lower in standing than the regular Muslim is. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam, that we have honored human beings. And their mention as far as any of the kitabs, as far as any of the messengers, has not been anything that is, so they're inferior in that state. They're inferior in the presence of men, and this is why they have this feeling of inferiority. They have like a complex as well. So when any of the human beings try to seek help from them, then this is something that makes them only transgress more, and it makes them kind of happy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Jinn, وَأَنَّهُ كَانَ رِجَالٌ مِّنَ الْإِنسِ يَعُوذُونَ بِرِجَالٍ مِّنَ الْجِنِّ فَزَادُوهُمْ رَهَقًا. That verily among mankind who are those who take shelter with the males among the jinn, but they only increase them in sin and in transgression. Another proof is that when men, or in humankind, they take assistance by them or they swear by them, it immediately makes them feel superior, it makes them feel good. Okay? So we know that the jinn are inferior in that sense. And in fact, from day one, that was mentioned when Adam alayhi salam was created, and all of the human beings and the jinn were told to do sajda, and this was the point there. So there are certain rules for the jinn. Like number one is that they cannot interfere in our world. They're not supposed to interfere. They have been told this, and by doing this, they get into issues. But it's far less than when it comes to sihr, when it comes to magic, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. So they're not supposed to interfere, and they're supposed to do their thing, and they're supposed to live in their own world. Where do they actually live? We'll talk about that, but one thing is clear, is that they live on this very same earth. They don't live in a different planet, but they're in their own world, and we are in our own world. And they have their own families, they have their own children, they have Muslim and non-Muslim amongst them, they procreate as well, they have lives, their ages are far more than us. Some of them can live thousands of years, subhanallah. Some of them can live hundreds of years. And of course, the strength of the jinn, average jinn, is far more than the average human being. There's no doubt about that. So there are different types of jinn. There's one type that flies in the air. They can fly, they can move. There's another type that will live amongst the animals or become basically part of, like the snakes and dogs and scorpions. And then there are some types that will reside and they'll wander around the world. Okay? And there's different names for them. The single jinn is called jinni. Okay? Jinni, not genie, jinni. That's probably where they got that word from in the first place. And then you have those that live amongst people. They're called amir or awamir. Okay? Then there are those who present themselves to children or the young. They are called arwah. Then you have those that are evil amongst the jinn. And the evil amongst the jinn are called what? Shayateen or shaitan. Okay? If they increase in their evil, they're called marid, as the Quran says. Min kulli shaitanim marid. And then they have the ability, there are some who have been given such strength and the ability to move heavy rocks and heavy things, and they are called ifrit, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Naml. So there are different kinds, different strength levels. They're not all the same, and the Quran mentions that as well. Scholars have differed on, there's a question that can jinn marry human beings? Can that actually happen? So there's a difference of opinion. According to Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he said it is possible for them to marry and have offspring. Believe it or not, in Ma'arif al-Quran, there's a narration mentioned, or there's, I believe Qurtubi is cited as well, that in the story of Bilqis, okay, the queen of Sheba, of the place in the story in Sulaiman alayhi salam, that Bilqis was actually her parents, her father was a human, but he married a jinni, and Bilqis was from the offspring. Has anybody heard this before? Okay, subhanAllah, yeah, it's actually known, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And So this can happen. A lot others, they say that no, it's not permissible, but still it could happen. There's a possibility. Okay, so where are the dwellings of the jinn and where are they found usually? Okay, can you find them in Corona in certain homes? Well, some people claim that. Well, it's possible, but here's the place that they usually live. They're not really too fond of Corona. Valleys, mountain passes, okay, wilderness areas, deserts. So they'd rather hang out in Joshua Tree than come here to our place, okay? It's not that fun here. Those are the places that they reside. Deserts, okay? Rubbish heaps, bins, places where there's food that is generally found as well, because obviously where there's going to be food leftovers, there's going to be bones. Then there are some amongst the jinn who are very disgusting amongst the jinn. Again, like human beings, they're good, they're bad, they're all sorts, just like that jinn. Then amongst the disgusting of the jinn, those that live in the most filthiest of areas, okay? And some of them are called khabithin and khabithat. And so the Prophet ﷺ taught us a dua that we should say when we go to the bathroom areas. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal-khaba'ith. Okay? Ya Allah, I seek protection you from khubuth, and khaba'ith are the names of these jinns that like to stay around the areas that are disgusting. So you ask protection from that. And you try to stay away from those kind of places, of course. Then you have caves and cleaves and burrows and holes and all of these, kind of places that usually human beings don't really have a good, unless you're camping out, you don't really go into these kind of areas. And this is why you should not urinate in those kind of areas, burrows, holes, or even like in the shaded area by trees. You try to stay away from those kind of places. Forests, of course, dense areas, dark areas, areas that are basically like wilderness. I think that kind of explains enough of where they live. And so one of the reasons why the Prophet ﷺ taught the Ummah, that we should recite Suratul Falaq and Suratul Nas, especially in the evening, and not have the children go out after it's dark, okay, for protection from things like this. Now, the ones that come in people's houses, okay, so on a serious note, there are some that would be able to come into the house. There are some that can come into your backyard. There are some like that, you can do that. Again, there are places that they have and the places that we have. They're also called Amir or Awamir, okay? The Prophet ﷺ said, indeed in Medina, there are a number of jinn who accepted Islam. So whoever sees one of these Amirs, let him ask it to leave. And if it continues to come, meaning ask it to leave thrice, and majority of the time they will leave. And if it does not, then you could kill it because it is a shaitan. So in other words, that, if it's there to cause trouble, then you would know about it. Again, this is, now how you would kill it, this is a different story. What would you do? There's explanation. I continue with some more places here. Camel pens, okay? I don't know how this is. This was something kind of strange to me as well. I wonder that why camel pens instead of, where there's sheep or other, I don't even know what you call that, but those kind of places, and abandoned places, of course. Abandoned places, graveyards, ruins, all of these kind of places are the places where they dwell. So you can understand they don't really like, very busy neighborhoods where there's human beings. They're not really interested in those kind of places. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said that is why those who cooperate with the shayateen increasingly go to these places which are the shelters of shaitan. When somebody wants to do black magic, okay, and we talk a little bit about that, I don't want to go all over the place, but it has to do with this. People, when they have to do with magic, this is the interaction of basically the human and the jinn world. And it really is where an evil person would sell himself basically to the shaitan, sell his soul, in order so that that demon can do tricks for him. And so this human being, who is very, a despicable human being, because why would you do this kind of thing? You're intending harm for others. A person who's doing magic is not doing magic to help the world. He's doing magic for his own gains and to destroy others and to harm other people. So this evil person would do what? Would do something that the jinn want. What would the jinn want? Does he have something that the jinn would benefit from? Can anybody tell me? What is the one thing that the jinn wants the most? What is it? One more time. His body. No. Status, superiority, control. The jinn wants to feel superior. The jinn wants to feel like I am above and he is less. So how would he do that? By making this human being doing humiliating things. By making him do disgusting things. The jinn becomes happy with that. Okay? As far as a human being and a Muslim, especially a Muslim with strong iman, who's always asking protection from Allah, who's always asking and reading the du'as and the verses of the Quran, the jinn is scared of that person. The jinn cannot stand this person. The jinn only looks at the weak person, or the one who's very weak, the one who's super scared, out of his mind. He kind of takes advantage of that. So when you have a person who is that evil, who would basically sacrifice himself and do the most disgusting things, what is the shaitan, what does this black magic incur? A lot of times it's things like you can't even imagine. Like you have to, go to the grave and walk around and, bring this type of blood and do this kind of crazy thing 3 o'clock in the morning. Like who does this kind of stuff? Only those people who are really evil in itself. And when they do that, what happens? They have the attention of the jinn. The jinn tells them to do this, and he's doing it. And now what? In return, the jinn will do a few simple tricks. A few simple tricks. For the jinn, it's very easy to do those tricks. It's very easy because he's powerful. Allah has given him a certain power. He's not all powerful. It's not like you can't take them down, but he's pretty powerful. A jinn can come in a body of a small girl, and that girl can be pretty powerful too. But at the end of the day, there's a limit to it. There is a limit to the power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone is the all-powerful. But you get the point here, that this person humiliates himself so that he can, basically the shaitan here thinks that, look, I made him run around like a fool. And that gives this, it gives him power. So these are the kind of things that people do in order to get some kind of, and that interaction there's a reason why it's not allowed for that reason. You are not allowed to do those kind of things, okay? So again, there are different types of jinn, and this is a little bit about them. Next thing here, marketplaces, okay? The marketplaces are some areas where the jinn would go. Why? Because there is lying, there's cheating, there's sins that are committed. And the Prophet ﷺ advised Salman radiallahu anhu, if you are able to, do not be the first to enter the market and don't be the last one. Verily it is the battlefield of shaitan. Okay, he puts his flag out there. Then the times when the shayateen or when the jinn spread. The times when they spread is, of course, the beginning of the night. This is the time when they disperse. And this is why it's better not to go at that time. What else is here? They say that the sihr here, when we talk about magic, okay, majority of the times, maybe people, if they don't find something, if you don't find something supernatural, you don't find any type of proof, and if it's just something that's in your head, majority of the time it is something that is psychological, because if there was something, then you would be able to see it. And the word sihr itself is also hidden. That sometimes you cannot tell. Things are happening to you, but there's no explanation. You go to the doctor, there's no explanation. Okay? There's marks, there's signs, but there's no explanation at all, zero findings, then this could be a possibility. Otherwise, the people that have usually complained about sihr and magic and jinn, there's always something that comes up. There's always either a medical issue, there's a psychological issue, there's always some type of issue which there could be actually a prescription for. Then you know that this is definitely has nothing to do with sihr or magic, okay? Let's see here. Possession, that's the next thing. Is there such thing as possession? In the Quran we call it al-mas, okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned it. إِنَّمَا يَتَخَبَّطُهُ الشَّيْطَانُ مِنَ الْمَسِّ. That yes, there are times, and one of the meanings of this is that a person can be affected. The person, of course you cannot be controlled, but definitely affected, sometimes more heavily than others. And some mention that the word mas is also as possession, okay? That the jinn can afflict and touch a person, and it's most commonly meant to mean possession. Though in the Sharia, there's both a person, when a person is harmed by a jinni from within his body or outside. This is a type of possession. There is different types. There's kulli, there's juz'i, there's da'im, there's ta'if. These are different names that the scholars have given. So when the jinni afflicts the whole body, that's an entire type of possession. Then there's a partial possession, when a limb or a part of the body or the leg or the tongue can be possessed. Or there's a continuous possession for a long time, or there's a partial possession for a few minutes, and some even call this as those type of severe nightmares. And at times when a person is basically, what do you call them? There's a name for it, where you feel like you're being held down. You wake up in the night, you feel like you're being held down. This could be a very short type of possession as well. And then there's symptoms of this possession. How do you know that a person is actually possessed? Is it possible? Well, first and foremost, the one who is possessed will normally faint or collapse when the adhan is said in the ear. Or when the recitation of Quran is recited, you can see them that they're affected. Either they will start to look left or right, or they'll start to cry, they'll start to scream, or go into a convulsion. Convulsion. They could basically faint, or it seems like a type of, what's another name for convulsion? Like a seizure, right? Right. They can gaze at the sky, they can do all of these different things. Those are symptoms that can happen if a person is possessed. Then there's symptoms while a person is basically fully awake: insomnia, anxiety, preferring seclusion, constant headaches, they have no medical explanation, laziness, absent-minded, convulsion, epilepsy, lack of concern in matters of cleanliness and hygiene. That's a big red flag. So these are symptoms. Then there's symptoms while a person is asleep: nightmares, like continuous nightmares, disturbing dreams, seeing black cats or ghosts or phantoms or stuff like that, or excessive laughing or excessive crying or even screaming while a person is asleep. I know that's kind of out there, but this stuff happens. It's rare, but it does happen. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does talk about this in the Quran, about being possessed, but then you go into the hadith and there's explanation here. Let's see here. How much time do we have? I have a couple of minutes here. So there's different ahadith that show how a person can be affected. Some of them we actually hear about and they're more commonly known. Okay, like the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, "Inna shaytana yajri min al-insani kama jari ad-dam," that a shaitan flows in the son of Adam just like blood flows. There's that. Then there's the other authentic hadith in which it's mentioned that not a single child is born except that the shaitan touches him. Hence, he's born crying. So it's like the beginning showing of that enmity. And it is only the exception that one son did not get touched. Out of all the children, can anybody guess? MashaAllah, MashaAllah, very good. Very good, Yusuf. Isa alayhi salam, okay? Why is that? The Quran says that she sought refuge. Who knows the verse here? Oh man, by the time I bring it up. وَأَنْبَتَهَا نَبَاتًا حَسَنًا وَكَفَّلَهَا زَكَرِيَّا. No. In another part of the Quran, she seeks refuge for her and for her offspring from the shaitan. And so this was the one exception that he did not get touched by the shaitan. Okay? Then another thing is, if any one of you yawns, let him cover his mouth. Why? Because the shaitan can enter that mouth. And one of the meanings is that the person becomes very overwhelmed with fatigue. You're yawning and you're not covering your mouth. That could also get you very tired, and that's a touch of the shaitan as well. Then Ibn al-Qayyim mentions, I witnessed our shaykh send someone to speak to the spirit inside a person who had convulsions. Okay, so this has happened where people would take over someone's body. Can this happen? How many of us believe that the jinn can enter a person's body? Anybody believe this? How many of us believe that can never happen? Okay, good. So it is something that is true, that can happen. Again, there is a lot of discussion on this, and I don't think we'll be able to cover that right now. But what are reasons that this could actually happen to a person? So the scholars mentioned, number one, it is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a person. Number two, it could be actually a punishment for that person. Number three, due to a desire or passion or love that can happen. Again, it's a different story that should it happen. Again, this is breaking the rules. They're going past their boundary, the jinn, if it is doing this. But can it happen? It is possible. A means of revenge. This is even known from the sunnah, from the hadith, that there had been times where a jinn had tried to take revenge because of one of its family members being killed or harmed, and sometimes, or most of the time, not knowingly, right? Because of a jinn is living at a certain place. How many people have heard that someone has cut trees in their backyard or has removed an entire place, and then thereafter they found trouble in their house? Anybody hear of this before? Or am I the only one? No? I've heard at least maybe half a dozen people complain to me. I've been here for like 10 years already, about their household and about the problems they've been suffering after they have cut out or removed certain places in their backyard. Maybe people have big backyards. Like I told you, I mean, you know, wilderness or areas, there are certain areas. We're not talking about every tree is, you know, there's a shaitan living there, or a jinn, but it is possible. So being careful about that, because it's a means of revenge. Of course, we're not trying to mess with them. They're not trying to, but it happens. Or it could be foolishness on part of a jinn. Or it could be as a result of magic. All of these reasons are actually there. This can happen. Okay? So this is the next point where if someone is possessed, what do you do? Well, this is something, then we talk about the next point, which is called ruqya. How many of us have heard of ruqya, al-shar'iyya? Okay. I think the last sheikh that came here, Sheikh Ammar, he went into detail about all of this. He showed you all of the sunnah and then all of the other things, because this is a big business out there as well. There are people who will give you all sorts of stuff. I think if we get into that, it's going to get long. But here's what we'll talk about. The ruqya is a means of protection from the effects of the jinn and from the effects of sihr. The ruqya, how do you know that the ruqya is Islamic or it is something that somebody just made up or somebody is fooling you? There are three things. Number one, that the ruqya should be from Quran or from hadith or from the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His names. If somebody is giving you a whole bunch of different numbers or putting in a language that you've never seen before, you already know that's a red flag. This person is doing something crazy. Okay? Or they tell you to go get some cloth from some faraway place and bring it to you and put it in something. If they say something like this, you already know this is crazy. Why do people fall for this? Why do people actually fall for it? Because they think this guy knows his stuff. Look, he's telling me to bring this leaf from this certain tree. He knows about the tree. He knows how it looks. And he's telling me to do this and do that. He must know what he's talking about. I've seen people from our own community say, mashallah, this guy, he's up there. He's very up there. He knows what he's doing. These people are idiots if they're using anything other than Quran, Hadith, or they're using without the names of Allah or the qualities of Allah. Okay? They're fooling those people. Right now, I know somebody that's in India. Right now. And they're using, again, shirts and using some crazy writing and all of this. Craziness. Could you imagine? And people, masjid going people will fall for this. Why do people fall for this? Because sometimes when you're going through a lot of difficulty, you really become, what do you become? You become desperate and you're just like, whatever helps. Whatever's going to help, I'll do. Number two, whatever the ruqya is, it has to be in Arabi. If it's in any other language other than Arabic, you know this person is fooling you. This person is fooling you. And number 3, it should not have anything that has words of shirk or to do with shirk or associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are usually the signs. Okay? So ruqya is something that is done, and unfortunately it's something that very few people do, and this is why whenever you have, you get calls all the time that, can you help this person? There's something going on. The family has fought. So 2 days ago, somebody called and said, look, from Maryland. And I contacted the ulama group and told them, look, there's many scholars there. You can ask for someone who's experienced in this. What were they saying? They complained about husband and wife issues. Now, sihr and magic is used a lot for this reason, to destroy couples, to destroy marriages and stuff like that. It's horrible. Unfortunately, it's done. So what did she say at the end? She said that, look, we were doing fine, and then all of a sudden, all these problems happened, and she said she discovered things in the backyard and certain things that had hair in it and other little things. So it's a possibility. It could happen. So anyways, we use this divine treatment known as the ruqya. And if anybody wants to know how, let's say somebody is possessed, somebody does have jinn, what's the easiest way to talk to this person? So the scholars mention that first and foremost, you don't show your weakness. If you show weakness, they will take advantage of that. You show that you are stern, that you have strong iman. You go up to the person, and the words that you say is Bismillah. You say the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very powerful. We know in the hadith, it's mentioned that when the adhan is said, the shaitan runs as far as it can so it doesn't hear the adhan. This is an authentic hadith. And it comes back only when the adhan is done, and then again iqamah, and after the iqamah is done, salah time is started, and then he's there, the shaitan, to try to trick you. What does he make you do? Instead of you focusing on the recitation of the imam, he makes you think, how was business today? How is that family member doing? Think about this, think about that. So much he gets inside your thoughts that even the imam sometimes forgets the rakat that the imam is in. And the imam is supposed to be the one whose salah is supposed to be the most concentrated. The imam forgets the rakat and people don't know. Right? So, say to this person who you feel might be, you say Bismillah, people have said the adhan, but you say to that person, Ana Abdullah, I am the servant of Allah, Ukhruj adu Allah, that you come out, or enemy of Allah. Okay? In other words, this is what usually the Raqis do, but of course they're much more trained, they know how to speak, and it's amazing when you hear some of these stories, how these things happen. And I think I will finish with one incident, okay? A true incident. I'm not going to make this up, of course. There's a lot more to be said. We were going to talk about soothsayers. We're going to talk about amulets. We're going to talk about ta'weez. We talk about different meetings with jinn. There's so much to talk about. Like I said, we can make this a part 2 series, inshallah. There's a lot more, but we don't have the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to conclude with an incident. By the way, does anybody have any question right now they want to ask real quick? Anybody have any question or comments? Yes. Yes. That's a good question. Don't they make their own food? Wallahu alam if they make their own food. But I know that one of their provisions is bones. Do they make their own food? That's a great question. I've never asked. Maybe. Yes. Are they homeless? No, they have homes. They have homes. Again, like we can't see them. They have their own societies. They have their own neighborhoods. They have their own world. We don't see them. But it is set up in these kind of places. Because you cannot coexist, coexist in the sense that you can't have a building with human beings and jinn living in there in the same time. It doesn't usually work like that. So you have the vast earth and the world that is being populated by human beings, and then there is another vast world. In fact, 3/4 of the world are water, And the hadith mentions that many of them live on, the shaitan has his throne on the water, and that many of them could be living on water or underwater. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And then there are caves and mountain places, without any end, without any limit. So these are the places. Where the human beings don't go is, I think, much larger than when the humans are populated. I don't know about this fact, but I'm pretty sure that's true. So they have their own places, yes. Their own food, that's a good one. Do they have their own type of biryani or maqluba? I don't know. We should find out. Yes. The bad jinns that are what? Yes. 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 Yes, yes. I mentioned in the beginning, وَأَنَّا مِنَّا الصَّالِحُونَ. There are righteous amongst us, and there are those that are not. There كُنَّا طَرَائِقَ قِدَدًا. There are many different forms, different groups of us. You can say different madhabs too. There are good jinn, then there are bad jinn, there are kuffar jinn, then there are jinn with different madhahib, then there may be jinn that are, wallahu alam, straight, then jinn that are the other way. Allah knows best. Christian, Hindu, all different religions. Yes. 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 Again, jinn and human beings are both going to be accountable on the Day of Judgment. Is there a Jannah for them? Yes, there is. A Jannah for the jinns and a Jannah for the human beings. Okay? Okay, somebody asked a question. Sorry, one second. How do you get rid of the paper that is suspected to have false ruqyah? Well, if there's false ruqyah, that means there's nothing to do with Quran there. You can throw it away where it belongs, in the trash. Most of the stuff people give is to fool others, and it is trash. The only thing you know that it's good if it has the name of Allah and if it has ayat. Now the tricky part is, some of them might mix that up. And if people mix that up, then you do what you do whenever you see any paper that has Allah's name. What do? Usually a Muslim is supposed to, you get letters and you get mail, anything that has Allah's name or the Quran, you put it together, and then you have it in a little box, and then you can use that and recycle that. You can use it and recycle it, you can bury it, you can burn it. You shouldn't throw that in the trash. Another thing some people do is have a dark marker, and then just basically mark over it, so that the name of Allah is not there, and then you can throw it in trash. What is that? Shred it. You could shred it. So if you have some kind of suspicion, you can look at it or you can show somebody. Some people get scared that if we open it, something's going to happen. There is no power except with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay? Remember that. But be careful of other things. People do all kind of crazy things. So just be careful about that. Yes? Yeah. Yes. That's what we talked about. The name of the jinn that are evil are called shayateen. There are shayateen amongst the humans, and there are shayateen amongst the jinn, and they are called shayateen or demons. Yes. That's what they're called. Yes, sir. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Yes. This is not an ayah of the Quran, it's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he mentions that the jinn, his arsh or his throne, the shaitan, on the water. And he sends out his little minions. And he goes to tell them to do the worst of things. And this is the hadith in which the shaitan who has caused trouble between the couple, he gets the biggest reward basically. Yeah. No, again, so the shaitan is always trying to, I wouldn't say compete. No, of course there's no comparison. Aliyadu billah. But we're trying to say that the jinn or this evil jinn reside in that area. Think of it as a residence, as a place where they are. The wilderness, the area which is darkness, that's where they are. Not in an honorable way. We're not talking about in an honorable way. No. But the word is used arsh as far as for the. Yes, it is possible. No, this is a authentic hadith. This is authentic hadith. We'll but there's a huge difference. One is basically the place of the shaitan in the darkness, not in a place of honor or respect, and one is Allah. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. You cannot compare the two. You cannot compare the two. It is, another question, is it possible to conspire with the jinn unknowingly? No, it's not possible. You cannot conspire unknowingly. It's very difficult. It's either you submit or you show yourself to be like a slave of it by doing the worst of things, or you cannot. Is it a conscious effort to do things for the jinn in return for tricks? Yes, it is definitely conscious. In fact, you are basically sacrificing yourself, your honor, your respect, your everything, and you're giving up and you're doing the worst of deeds in order to get this type of attention from the jinn. So yes, this is haram. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانَ. وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانَ. Even though the people, they tried to blame Sulaiman alayhi salam for doing magic, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say that he didn't do magic. Allah said, وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانَ. Sulaiman alayhi salam did not do kufr. In other words, doing magic or any type of magic is straightforward kufr, and it kufr and shirk, and it should be left. We should stay far away from it. Okay, yes, brother, go ahead. Last one or two, last question, go ahead. Yes. 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 Yes, yes. If we get into that, that's from the origins of the jinn. Then we have to start all the way from that, and maybe inshallah in the next session we can talk about that in detail. We talk about Harut and Marut. We talk about how the shaitan came to try to destroy some of this stuff, but actually his whole intention was to be the leader, and there's a lot of saying about this, okay? So this leads to how the jinn, how magic started. This is the origin and history of that, and we'll get to that inshallah in the next time. So the time is up. Okay, yeah. Yes. Tricks are different. Tricks are different. You do little tricks, illusions, that's fine. It's just for fun. That's a whole different thing. But when it comes to other evil things involved, that's when problems happen. Anyways, guys, inshallah, we're going to do another series at another time. We'll announce it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to practice what has been said. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. The last thing I'm going to say before adhan, always recite your mu'awwidhatayn. Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq. Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas. For protection every night before you go to sleep. Try to read all the 4 qul. Blow on yourself and ask for protection, inshallah. And ayatul kursi, mashallah, jazakallah khair. And inshallah, we will be protected from that. We're going to have adhan and we'll start salah just a minute afterwards. Jazakumullah khair.
أكبر الله أكبر